And the Bucs hope that this will be their first victory ever.
We have a great area, growing area, in Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Sarasota, Bradenton, Lakeland, and Winnehaven, and even Wachula. Over 2 million fans, and it's the fastest growing area in the United States.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, live from Tampa Stadium. For the first time ever in a regular season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers enter the stadium with numbers in both the win and loss columns. The Buccaneers came onto the field to a wild standing ovation from the some 60,000-plus fans at Tampa Stadium. They did not introduce any players individually. The PA announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers."
Welcome to San Diego, California, Super Bowl 37. It is Tampa Bay versus the Oakland Raiders. Third down, 18, dropping Gannon, looking Gannon, throws up the middle, heads to the side, at the 40, Derek Brooks 30, Brooks to the 25, 20, Derek Brooks all the way, there it is, the dagger's in, we're going to win the Super Bowl.
Tom Brady signing with the Tampa Bay Bucs tomorrow. Holy hell.
Everyone always says, why the Bucs, man? Why did you choose the Bucs? And it was a no-brainer.
Brady has all kinds of time, throws toward the end zone. It is a caught ball. Touchdown, Tampa Bay, Mike Evans. 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Brady to throw, throws a deep pass downfield. Got Scotty Miller in the open, makes the catch. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Super Bowl 55 will be underway at Raymond James Stadium. Here's the snap out of the gun. Play action fake pass to Gronkowski. He's going to score a touchdown. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Holy guacamole. Bucs are the Super Bowl champs. They can't stop the clock. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
On 3rd and 3, they protect Brady. Scans the field and lets it fly. It's Evans. It's a touchdown.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, returning from the IR this week, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. It is our Week 1 game preview show. Football is finally back. We got to watch the Super Bowl 56 champions open up and get the brakes beat off them at home last night on national television, which officially means football is back. The Buccaneers square off against the Dallas Cowboys this Sunday night on NBC. Believe it's an 8:15 p.m. kickoff, somewhere right around there. Should be a great game. Evan, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Obviously the first game preview of the regular season of 2022. Hard to believe we're already here after a long-awaited and really crazy offseason, finally here and finally going to get some answers to some questions that, not only we have, but a lot of people have. And, it's not just about the Bucs, it's about some of the Bucs opponents as well. So that they have coming up. And it's, last night, even though the game wasn't as good, just the feeling that football is back is still a really good one. Even with, college football last week, like it's still really good feeling that football is back. So really looking forward to this weekend.
It was such a funny game, too, because going into it, I had picked the Bills. A lot of people were picking the Rams, at least the analysts on TV, but I know a lot of people personally who picked the Bills, and I think more people picked the Bills to win that one. But I like the Bills, and I like the over for last night. And unfortunately, the Rams couldn't muster up more than 10 points during the game. I think the over-under line was 51 points, and it was only 41, so I picked the Bills, but I also picked the over. So kind of broke even on that bit, but it is what it is, man. Football is back, and when I can let out my inner degenerate every weekend and bet on games, I don't like betting on baseball. I don't like betting on other stuff like that. But if you guys do like betting on football season, it's the perfect time to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at betonline.ag. Coming up on the 3rd year in a row. It's hard to believe we've been on the podcast network this long, but incredibly grateful to launch a great 2022 season of coverage. We had Sean King on our show earlier this week. He's going to be a permanent guest throughout the rest of this season. Just really excited for things to be back and rolling. But we have a little bit of a controversy to address. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I don't want people to get worked up.
Depending on who you ask.
It is not a big deal. All right, but you folks may have noticed we are 2 shows into the month of September, and the calendar page behind me has been turned. A bit unceremoniously, if you will. I did it right before the podcast with Sean King, but our player of the month for September is Devin White. Evan, give me a bold prediction for Devin White this season since we're talking about him. I got mine, but I'm waiting to hear yours.
Okay, I'll say that he has a career high in sacks. I'll say he gets 10 sacks. How about that? That's a bold prediction. Double-digit sacks from a linebacker, not a defensive lineman, from a linebacker who's an inside linebacker. They're going to be blitzing him a lot. So I'll say Devin White gets double-digit sacks this season.
Well, a bolder prediction than mine, because mine was in the same exact vein. I had him getting above or at 8 sacks this year. Maybe not bold. Quite.
I'm trying to go bold.
Yeah, I know. You're just a little bit more bold than I am this week. Maybe not quite double digits, but I would like to see him get after the quarterback a little bit better this year because that has been one of his strengths since entering the league and playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But
he had about 4 sacks last year that he just missed because he goes so quick.
Yeah.
He's almost too fast for his own good.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
He zooms by and the quarterback makes one move and he's going by so fast that he can't recover. So hopefully he's able to clean that up. And bold predictions, 95% of the time they're not going to be right. That's why they're bold predictions.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the game preview here. As I had mentioned at the top of the podcast, Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys taking each other on Sunday Night Football, a prime-time, nationally televised game for the Buccaneers to open up the regular season, just like last year, except that was on Thursday Night Football. Now this is on Sunday Night Football. We got a glimpse of this Sunday Night Football broadcast crew actually on Thursday night. What do you make of it, man? The announce team of Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth. I'm one of those people who can tune out Chris Collinsworth, but I wasn't too crazy about the job that Mike had done in the booth. I couldn't really get behind it like I could in Al Michaels per se.
Well, to be fair to Mike Tirico, Al Michaels is one of the most iconic broadcasters I think of all time. I mean, he has one of the most iconic lines of all time with the 1980 U.S. men's hockey. So like, it's not easy to replace, especially when you're used to a certain someone, calling those Sunday night games for so long. It's a tough transition. But I like Mike Tirico with ESPN, and I thought, he did a fine job last night, and he hasn't really been doing this full time since he got to NBC. So I think they're working out the kinks. Yeah, Collinsworth gets on my nerves a lot though.
Now here's a guy
I can't tune him out.
Well, Mike Tirico.
The biggest thing for me was last year when the Bucs were playing the Patriots, and you would have thought Mac Jones was the second coming of Jesus. Even his incompletions. Chris Collinsworth swore that he was playing the best football game he'd ever seen in his life. And Mac Jones threw for 200 yards. That's the one that frustrated me the most. Normally, announcers don't get on my nerves as much, but Collinsworth that night, I was like, stop.
Well, Mike Tirico, here's a guy who actually had a little bit of rotation on the Sunday Night Football lineup. Last year, he was kind of swapping weeks with Al Michaels. I think he ended up doing more games than Michaels did throughout the year as they kind of...
Michaels was doing the West Coast games.
Right, and it almost felt like they were phasing him out to a degree, and ultimately we see what happens. But not a lot of people think that stuff is interesting, but I've always thought that, the new broadcast lineups, and there's a lot of new ones this year, it's certainly going to be something to get used to. Thursday Night Football on Amazon. We're going to get our first look at that next week. I'm not looking forward to that.
I hate how everybody believed that football is real.
Hey, that's just good. That's just good marketing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's an ad campaign done well. If somebody can watch those videos and actually question for longer than 10 seconds if it was real.
Because oh my God, is that the football they're using? I'm like, no.
Is that really the football they're going to be using on Thursday Night Football? It reminded me of those old, the fantasy files, the Draft Me, where a guy would basically just hit the cross right from 110 yards away on the other field or whatever. Stuff like that is always good fun. But glad to see it has a place in football here in 2022, and should be an interesting season as these broadcast teams get started. But let's talk about the game.
Before we get going, $2
okay, all
super
right,
chat.
all right.
$2 super chat from James Hill, Mr. Bucks Nation. Thank you, James, kicking us off tonight. So yeah, we do have a football game to talk about, though. We finally have a football game that actually means something now. So they count for real now.
Oh yeah, should be exciting. No division action until week 2, but this is still a pretty tough test for Tampa Bay. When you look at these two teams, tail of the tape says that the Buccaneers have a better roster on paper, given that everyone is coming into this mostly healthy. We'll talk about Chris Godwin here shortly. But what do you make of this? At surface level, when you come into this one, what are some major bullet points that stick out to you, both for Dallas and both for Tampa Bay? Because I know that a lot of people can look at Tampa Bay and assume they have the better roster, so this is just going to be a win. But I also feel like Dallas put together a team this year that's going to be a little more competitive than people think they will be.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Dallas's offseason. That said, they still have a lot of talent. Top tier talent with like Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. I know Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been the same player, but CeeDee Lamb's a good player, Dalton Schultz as well. And then of course they have on the defensive side, they have a lot of high end young talent with Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, and then also DeMarcus Lawrence there. So there's a lot of talent on this Dallas team. Despite them losing some pieces in the offseason, there's a lot of talent on this team still. So the Bucks can't overlook them. The one thing I will look at is in 2021, I think it's good to look at the past matchup, but it's also when you look at the past matchup, you also have to remember this is a year ago, right? In a full year. So I believe the game was actually a year ago today. I believe it was September 9th was the first game. So it's a year ago today as we're recording this. And Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, and Chris Godwin in that game combined for 316 yards, 4 touchdowns. 2 of those 3 aren't even on the roster anymore, and one of them might not even play. So that's a lot of production. That is a ton of production that the Buccaneers may be losing. Now, the other thing about the Cowboys, Amari Cooper in that game had 13 receptions for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yet again, he is no longer on the Dallas Cowboys. That's a lot of production that they're missing. So these two teams are really going to be different than they were last year. And I wouldn't expect a carbon copy of last year's game. It might be similar in some ways because they didn't have that much roster turnover. But I do think you're going to see 2 different versions of these teams. It's not going to be the same teams that you saw. I think obviously Dallas's rookies with Micah Parsons got better as the year went on. Than week 1 last year. If the Bucks sort of stopped their sloppiness that they had in week 1 last year, they got better as the year went on for that. And it's going to be interesting because, like I said, I think both of these teams are different. You made a good point. On paper, the Bucks are the better team, but that doesn't always mean a win. It definitely doesn't mean an easy win, especially when you're going on the road as well. That's going to be, I know Dallas isn't like a huge home field advantage. Like it's not like a very difficult place to play, like a Seattle or New Orleans or anything. But, going on the road at any point is tough, especially when I do think the Cowboys have taken a step back. I don't think they're the best team in the NFC East. I think that's the Eagles. However, that doesn't mean the Dallas Cowboys are a bad team. I still think the Dallas Cowboys are a good team, and to beat a good team on the road, it's not easy.
Yeah, and you spoke to the sloppiness of week 1 football, and I wanted to talk about that very quickly because that's not only something that the Bucs are going to have to work through, but every team in the NFL this week. I mean, Thursday Night Football, we just watched the Super Bowl champions and the Buffalo Bills, who were both poised to be 2 of the better teams in the league. Man, I'll tell you what, if the Rams played like that back in January, the Bucs would have ended up hoisting the Lombardi, despite the injuries that they already had. The Rams look terrible, but it's also week 1 football. I mean, it was, 4 total turnovers in the first half? 3 of them were for Buffalo, who I thought was going to hand the game away for a very long time until they turned it on in the second half. But I almost think an advisory here is necessary because I want to go into this game and, it's easy to say, like, yeah, this team is going to want to eliminate mistakes this week. And you can say that every week of the season, but this week in particular, it feels like we still might see some.
Yeah, you might. And also you're talking about, I hate to be a dead horse, but the quarterback goes away for 11 days. It's missing some chemistry potentially. Guy like Russell Gage hasn't practiced a bunch. Julio Jones been in and out of practice, so we don't know if Chris Godwin's going to play. So yeah, it definitely could potentially be a little sloppy, and that's to be expected. So in 2021, though, the Bucs won by 2. They won that game 31-29. Should have been a lot. The Bucs should have handled business there. The Bucs had 4 turnovers to Dallas's 1. That can't happen on Sunday night if you want to win again. Because I don't know if there's not many games where you're going to have 4 turnovers, the other team's going to have 1, and you're going to win the game. There's just not many games like that in the NFL. So, obviously one of them was a Hail Mary. Okay. That counts as a turnover. Right before the half, it was the Hail Mary. But then 2 critical fumbles, the Ronald Jones fumble. And if you remember the Chris Godwin fumble, where Chris Godwin was about to score and he fumbled it right at the goal line, basically.
God, that was towards the end of the game, too. That was crunch time. I mean, he
scores
there.
That would have clinched the game right there.
Yeah, he scores there. We don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, and then the one that went right through Leonard Fournette's hands on a screen pass. So that's sloppy, and that can't happen on Sunday night. And then in terms of more sloppiness, the penalties were an even bigger problem. Dallas had 8 for 55 yards. Okay, 8 penalties a lot, but 55 yards, not that bad. Tampa had 11 for 106 yards. Again, if this is the same exact stats on Sunday night, I don't know if the Bucs are winning this football game, because I don't know how many games you're going to be able to have 3 more turnovers and 50 more yards and penalties than the other team and still win the game. I just don't know if you're going to be able to do that. So they're going to have to clean it up. And Todd Bowles even spoke about that today. He said that, last time they played, he had 4 turnovers and 11 penalties. So you cut the penalties in half and you cut the turnovers in half last year. The Bucs blow that team out. And this year, I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout for either side, but you need to be able to do better than that. And no matter who's on the team, no matter who it is, you need to do better. And I expect they will. Obviously, tough to predict exactly what's going to happen, but you expect that they're going to put an emphasis on, taking care of the football and playing fundamental football, not sloppy football.
Before we go any further, let's take a look at the injury report, go over who's in and who's out for this week's game. Cornerback Zion McCollum did not practice at all this week, kind of nursing a hamstring injury, so that's going to be a question mark here to start off the season. So your rookie corner has been ruled out. The only player officially ruled out for Tampa Bay. Wide receiver Russell Gage, as you had alluded to, has also been dealing with a hamstring injury, was limited all week at practice. He is listed as questionable. We can get into it here shortly as to why I think he ends up playing, but I think he is expected to play. Running back Gio Bernard with an ankle injury, limited participation all week, full participation today. He is expected to play. Levante David.
If they don't have an injury designation after today, they are playing.
Yeah, Levante David expected to play. Mike Evans will be out there, had a couple of vet days off this week. Safety Mike Edwards, dealing with an illness, was limited participation, but full participation for Friday. He should be out there. Wide receiver Julio Jones, the new number 6.
That's right.
Non-injury related, had a rest day, did not participate on Wednesday. He was full participation the rest of the week. And speaking of Julio Jones, just really quickly, this will be his official debut in a Buccaneers uniform, seeing as he'll wear the number 6 now. A couple of Bucs legends wearing number 6 these past 2 years, huh? Julio Jones and Le'Veon Bell in the span of a year. How about that? I'm excited to watch Julio. It's hard. It has been so hard to not get myself to buy into the hype. But we have heard from just about everyone, including the man himself, that he hasn't felt this good about playing football in a couple of years. He said it is night and day compared to his time in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we're going to see here in a little bit. We're going to see here in about, 48 hours. We're going to see, because you can say that, but it's different. Playing is different than practicing. Playing in a preseason game a few snaps is different than playing a full game. So yeah, well, I'm hopeful. Like I hope he can, but he hasn't played a whole lot recently. History will tell you a 33-year-old wide receiver that hasn't played a ton recently and has had like soft tissue problems is likely to have those problems again. You just hope that it doesn't hinder most of his season, which I hopefully it won't. And he's healthy right now, Hopefully he can stay healthy for most of the season.
Yeah, and I don't want to come out here on a limb and say that he's going to go get 150 yards and 2-3 touchdowns, because that's not what's going to happen at the wide receiver 4 position. But I just want to see him play healthy. I know a lot of fans around the NFL want to see him play healthy. I know some Falcons fans are going to be watching this game just to see how he looks, right? Just to see how much gas he has left in the tank. Because, yeah, when you're a wide receiver, or really any position for that matter in the NFL, and you get over that 30-year-old milestone, a lot of people start to look at you differently. And as far as Julio Jones, I mean, I said it myself. I'll eat crow. 2 months ago, I didn't really want him on this team. You know what I mean? I wasn't clamoring for him. I wasn't calling his name to help out this wide receiver room. But the fact of the matter is he's here now, and he's ready to contribute. And this is a guy who, if he's on, man, I mean, it's Julio Jones. You got to give him his flowers, you know?
Yeah, the talent's still there. It's just the availability part of it and the explosiveness part of it. You know, he's not the same player, but that doesn't mean he's not a good player. So, and to have him as your potential wide receiver 4, maybe wide receiver 3 on Sunday night, it's definitely a luxury for sure.
Logan Ryan and Tristan Wirfs also round out the injury report. Both of those guys are expected to play. They should be fine. Let's talk about the elephant in the room here, and that is wide receiver Chris Godwin. The $1,000,000 question. Is he going to play on Sunday Night Football? Fresh off an ACL tear in what, December? November?
December. I
believe
December 14th, I believe.
So we are talking the course of 9 to 10 months. I think the average timetable on an ACL is a year, like a full calendar year.
About 9 to 12 is the timetable. 9 at a minimum.
Sean King said it last week. Apparently, Tampa Bay Buccaneers heal differently, because Chris Godwin has been practicing all week. He has been in a non-contact jersey, so he hasn't seen any like full speed action throughout training camp in the preseason. But the fact that he's out there at all, moving around, I mean, this guy was doing full sprints 2 months ago back in July. So safe to say he's ahead of schedule on the physical rehab part of things. But the $1,000,000 question becomes, does he play Sunday night? If he doesn't play, when is he available? And I will preface it with this. I thought Sean King had a pretty interesting take. You know, in the NFL, guys get hit. Availability is the best ability. But Sean had also alluded to, you know, if he's not ready week 1, but he's ready week 3, week 4, he doesn't feel like there's a huge difference in waiting that long, considering the scale of an ACL injury, which takes upwards of a year to be fully healed. So it's kind of like a now or never thing, at least the way that he looks at it. But I don't know. I mean, it's been a lot of, obviously there's been a lot of chirping about Chris Godwin's injury, a lot more good news than bad news. But let me ask you this question. Does he play against the Cowboys in week 1?
No. I don't think he does. They've talked a lot. He talked this week, and Todd Bowles sort of said the same thing about, you know, they want him here at the end of the season. They want to ensure that he's there at the end of the season when the games get more important. You know, when you get into December football and then start playing in January, like the games get more, each game gets more important. So I don't think that they will risk it. I still think that maybe week 2, but I still think week 3 might be that spot. If this team didn't have the wide receiver depth, maybe. And Godwin talked about that the other day. He said, he was asked about that. You know, if this team didn't have the depth it does, would you maybe feel, you know, more pressure to come back? And he said, yeah, like there would be, like, it does sort of take like an ease knowing that, like, hey, if you're not 100% ready, like, you don't need to be out there, because they still have Mike Evans, Russell Gage, Julio Jones. Like, they certainly need you in the long run, but they don't need you this week. And I'm not saying that they don't need him to beat the Dallas Cowboys. It could certainly help. And they'll be a worse team, you know, if he can't play, they're worse. But I don't think one game is worth potentially risking, you know, his status for week 16, week 17, and the playoffs, which obviously we saw last year was very critical. So I don't believe he plays. I think he's very close, but I don't think he plays.
I want to agree. Like, my gut has told me even way back, you know, when we were talking about when we were first talking about the possibility of him returning week 1, because I think the belief among most people up until June, July, when he started to get involved in training camp, is that this guy's going to miss the first few weeks of the season. And I think now everybody's perspective has flipped to this hopeful optimism, but we still have to kind of be realistic with ourselves here and say that, like, listen, trotting him out week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys, it probably won't be as pass heavy of a game as it was last year, but I still think there's going to be an opportunity for big plays and for this offense to really open things up against Dallas. But it's still a big ask, and it's one of those things where if he does play this week, I am 110% certain. Wow, that was rough. I am 110% certain that he'll be on a snap count. So you'll see him, but it'll probably be in like a preseason capacity, maybe roll him out there for certain looks on offense. But for the most part, I can't imagine the workload will be too intensive for him, even in these games where he may or may not be feeling better 2 to 3 to 4 weeks from now as he's starting to get acclimated again in this offense. Because like you said, the most important thing to Tampa Bay isn't so much the statistics he puts up this year. It's having him ready to go once you're playing football games in January and early February.
Right. And that's the most important thing. And that has to be the priority. One of the big reasons this team didn't win the Super Bowl last year was health. So I think that has to be a priority. And I think it is for them. So you mentioned the thing about how you don't think it'll be as pass heavy. I agree. Last year's matchup, Dak Prescott threw the ball 58 times. The Cowboys had a total of 18 runs. Zeke Elliott ran the ball 11 times. But Tom Brady wasn't too far behind them with 50 pass attempts. And the Buccaneers ran the ball even less with 14. Leonard Fournette had 9 carries. I would expect that to go up to around, at least by 10. At least it'll be in the 15 to 20 range. Maybe like 22 or so. Like they're gonna try and put an emphasis on running the ball a bit more. Obviously, if the passing is working, like they're still gonna be, just because we talk about them wanting to run the football more, they're still gonna be a pass first offense. Like that's not going to change. But I do think they're gonna give the ball to Lenny a lot more than 9 times on Sunday night, and I think the Cowboys are gonna give the ball to Zeke a lot more than 11 times. On Sunday night. I just think both those teams know that, like, in order to have some success, they need to run the ball a little bit better. So I do think it'll still be pass heavy, but it won't be as pass heavy. And that's another reason why maybe Godwin being out there doesn't have to be, and you're right. If he is out there, it's on a snap count. I would guess if he is out there, it's probably on some third downs. It's on some critical downs that they need him. I would guess his snap count, like you said, it was kind of like a preseason. It'd be like 15 to 20 snaps, and then he would be out. So if he does play, I would expect him to be on a snap count. But ultimately, I think they're going to make the more cautious decision because of the depth that they have. And I think that they're going to sit him out and see if they can get out of Dallas with a win.
You mentioned Leonard Fournette briefly. Let's talk about the run game coming into this one. It's been an interesting topic of conversation. I haven't heard it too much, but I do feel like it bears talking about. Todd Bowles alluded to a couple of times over the offseason that I feel like the Bucs want to make an effort to actually get the run game, make it a factor in their offense this year. Leonard Fournette had his days where he took over games. I mean, look over at the Indianapolis Colts game from last year. 4 touchdowns for him on the day. I know he caught a few of those as well, but that's one of those days where the run game was what kept the Buccaneers offense rolling in that game against Indianapolis. Do you think they legitimately make an effort to get him a lot more involved? I know you just paid the guy, so it obviously makes sense. And I think another thing that they want to do is you want to avoid a 45-year-old Tom Brady from throwing the ball, a couple hundred more times than every other quarterback by the end of the year, because I know he got it done. I know we talk a lot about 5,300 yards, 43 touchdowns in the regular season for Tom Brady, but they were still asking him to do a hell of a lot at 44 years old.
Yeah, and I'm sure Brady would prefer to throw the ball less. So yeah, I do. I do think they emphasize the run a lot this year. They're not going to become the Tennessee Titans or the Baltimore Ravens, but I do think they're going to emphasize that run, and I sort of answered the question with Dallas. I think it's going to be relatively the same game plan every week. I think you're going to incorporate Leonard Fournette a bit more. You're going to incorporate Rashad White a bit more, Giovanni Bernard, maybe even Keyshawn Vaughn. Like, I think you're going to try and get the running backs, involved a bit more. Especially, and guys like Keyshawn Vaughn, like, guys that tend to struggle with passing. That's a way to give them the ball. It is running the football. Because Keyshawn Vaughn, from a pure just running standpoint, he hasn't been as bad. But when you ask him to catch out of the backfield because you're so pass heavy, that's when you can run into some trouble. So, like I said, still believe this offense is it's going to be a pass first offense. They have all these weapons, and
they're still running the Arians offense.
Going to be a pass first offense for sure, but I'm not saying that. Oh man, yeah, they're just gonna run it. No, like they're gonna throw the ball a lot. They're just gonna run it a bit more than they did last year. That's all.
May or may not be on first down.
I may or may not. People's heads will explode.
Oh man! Before we talk about the other side of the football, I would be remiss if we didn't mention the quarterback. I feel like it isn't a topic we need to dive too deep into, but given the personal problems that we have heard so publicly about with quarterback Tom Brady, he, more than anyone else, should be ready to just get this game started and really go out there and not only put up a win, but I feel like if the Buccaneers can win this week, it goes a long way in preventing people from talking about Tom Brady's personal life for the rest of the year. Because as we know, once real football gets started, it's hard to talk about much else.
Yeah. There's once that actually happens, it's easier to just focus on that rather than anything else, and that may or may not be happening. You're reading a lot of tabloids and stuff. Tabloids typically, the history shows you that tabloids aren't correct, right? So we don't know, and you know what? Probably never know. Honestly,
no, I mean, you're never going to know the 110% truth. That's how it is with stories like this. But I think for Tom and the boys, it's just another year of blocking out the noise, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure in that locker room they don't care. Like I'm sure, and I'm sure when Brady steps in that locker room, he doesn't, he can't. You can't be thinking about whatever's going on. If there's anything going on, you can't be thinking about that. And that's just not with him. That's with any player. So, you got to put everything aside. You have a job to do, and your job is to go out there and win football games. So you have to go out there and do it. So there's no excuses. Once they drop this game, you can't say, well, his personal stuff. Who cares? At that point, it's a loss. Like, who cares about your personal stuff? Dallas isn't going to say, you know what, he's got some personal stuff. Let's just let him throw a touchdown.
Let's take it easy on him this week.
Yeah,
just give him this one.
Like they're not doing that. That they want to go out there and win the football game. So that's what you got to go out there and try and do. So yeah, nobody's gonna feel bad for anybody on this team, whether the injuries or all the distractions or anything. Nobody's gonna feel bad for anybody on this team. They're gonna have to go out there and they're gonna have to win games because they're expected to. That is the expectation now. That is the standard that's been set, and that's what they have to keep up.
Let's talk about the other side of the football. Our buddy Willie Beeman had alluded to it in chat, but when you look at the roster for the Dallas Cowboys and you take a closer look at that offensive line, it has not been super friendly to them these last couple of months. They just lost Tyron Smith for a good chunk of the year. He goes down with injury. They just signed a 40-year-old offensive tackle and Marcus Peters, which will actually be the first time. Jason Peters, excuse me. It'll actually be the first time in NFL history we have had two 40-year-old players, 40-plus-year-old players playing against each other. But really, Jason Peters, his skill set is nothing to sneeze at because even at 40 years old, he's still a pretty damn good option for a tackle.
Passable.
Yeah. I mean, he's a starting tackle in the NFL, which is hard enough to do because there's only 32 of those guys. And the fact that he's still pulling it off at 40 is something, but you had said on the season predictions show that you think the Buccaneers defense is probably going to get a head start over the offense this time of year. What are your expectations for them coming into this week, especially playing a busted up offensive line for Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas offensive line, not just the injury to Tyron Smith, but they lost Lyle Collins. in free agency. They lost Connor Williams in free agency. So those are two big pieces. Connor Williams wasn't really that good, but Lyle Collins was a legit good player, and surprised they really let him walk. But yeah, that's big pieces right there. That's three starters that they're trying to replace. And now, they're trying to replace one with a rookie, Tyler Smith, who was a reach at the time, first round pick. So they signed Jason Peters off the street, and now he has to maybe go out and play. I don't know if he'll play the whole game or not, but it's definitely up to the Bucs defense, I think, to be able to exploit this. This is, Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Akeem Hicks, Vita Vea. This Cowboys offensive line isn't terrible because they still have talent. However, there's a clear weakness there, and it wasn't there last season. We had one sack on Dak Prescott last season. Need to have more than that this season, because with that offensive line, you need to be able to exploit a weakness, and right there is a clear weakness. The Cowboys, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the Cowboys, they change when Tyron Smith is not in the lineup. It is like drastic difference because their offense just, for some reason, and maybe it's some of it's coincidence, but I think some of it's just how good of a player he is, but he hasn't been available, and their record when they're without him just isn't that good. Their offensive efficiency isn't that good, and it really goes down a lot when they don't have him. So that's a big loss for them. Even if you were able to replace him with probably the best tackle that's on the street right now, like your best case scenario, Jason Peters, it's still not the same level. So the Bucs are going to have to exploit that. And I think the secondary is going to have to be good. They had trouble containing the Cowboys wide receivers last season. Amari Cooper, like I said, is no longer there. It makes it a bit easier. Now CeeDee Lamb's the number one option. Even CeeDee Lamb last year had 7 receptions for 104 yards and a touchdown. So you're going to have to be able to figure out a way to contain him. Michael Gallup for this game is out. So that means it is CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of inexperienced receivers that Dak Prescott's going to be throwing to. The secondary can't be torched. And part of that has to do with the defensive line getting there, specifically getting there with 4. That's a big point of emphasis, Dak Prescott's a good quarterback against the blitz, and he burned the Bucs a few times last year against the blitz. So getting there with 4 is important, and I think that secondary is going to have to play well.
A guy that Dak Prescott wasn't able to get away from last season was Shaq Barrett, and I wanted to talk about this pass rush. In particular, one of the pieces on the offensive line that they are going to be going up against, it's important to note that Tyron Smith going to be missing a chunk of the season over there at the left tackle position. Stepping up for him is Tyler Smith, who is a rookie. This is his first NFL start, and he's basically going to be looking at Joe Tryon and Shaq Barrett.
That's likely to be Peters, though, because he wasn't even healthy. Like Tyler Smith, there were some questions about his health. So that's another reason why they signed Peters. So if Peters plays, I would expect him to be a left tackle.
Okay. Well,
but Tyler Smith was supposed to maybe be a starting guard for them. So that takes away another spot of their offensive line where they have to put a reserve in there. So that stuff matters. Like when you're interchanging those, especially on the fly. The Bucs, they've had some issues, an issue with an injury in the offensive line earlier this training camp. But the only good thing about Ryan Jensen's injury, it happened on the second day of training camp. Robert Hainsey has been able to basically go the entire training camp knowing and preparing as if he's the starting center.
6 weeks now.
And now the Cowboys are going to have to go sort of on the fly and sort of rework their offensive line within a span of 2 weeks. So there is a definite advantage that the Buccaneers have, particularly on the defensive line, and they're going to have to be able to take advantage of it. Because if they don't, who knows how long of a day it could be for the defense. Because if you give Dak Prescott time, it could be a long day.
Yeah, Dak Prescott's a talented quarterback, and is he going to get the ball out quickly? Yeah, as quick as he can, as long as he can find one of those pass catchers open down the field. But on the defensive side of the ball, the line of scrimmage is where all these fireworks are going to be, in my opinion. We talked about the missing pieces on the offensive line for Dallas, and of course, Jason Peters filling in last minute, that left tackle position, kind of moving some guys around. The inexperience factor, also something to keep track of there. But the pass rushers to Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks in the middle, I wanted to highlight that as well. Dallas center Tyler last name starts with a B. I cannot remember how to pronounce it.
Spidaz, I think.
He was terrible last year in their game against the Cowboys. I mean, he was the worst lineman.
I think he got bull rushed by Vita Vea the one time.
He was the worst lineman Dallas had, and he is going to have his hands full yet again because Vita Vea already took his lunch money once. Now he's got damn near 300-pound Akeem Hicks ready to do it too. I think this defensive line is going to make or break what Dallas is able to do on offense throughout the entire game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree. And a lot of people are talking about the Buccaneers offensive line, and nobody's talking about Dallas's offensive line. It's like Dallas doesn't have offensive line issues of their own. Kind of confusing to me. A lot of people claim, even Sean King last week, as we get another $2 super chat from Mr. Bucks.
Let's go.
Fireworks.
Hey, you know what? I know you don't like giving him recognition. I know you're not the biggest fan of the guy, but hey, let's clap it up for the boy, huh? First couple of super chats of the 2022 season, courtesy of our good buddy James Hill, a.k.a. Mr. Bucks Nation. Pleasure to have you chipping in. Thank you for donating to the Wendy's Fund.
Yeah, thank you. So, the Bucks, I even disagree with Sean King last week or earlier this week when he said, he made the joke about me being gone and said, like the Buccaneers offensive line, Evans unavailable. The Bucks offensive line has one injury. The Bucks starting offensive line has one injury, and that's Ryan Jensen. It's an important one for sure. The center is the only other player in the game that's going to touch the ball every play besides the quarterback.
But before Jensen was hurt, this is exactly like what we thought it was going to look like. I mean, you can sub Hainsey for Jensen. We still knew it was going to be a guy who had to fight for that left guard spot. And we knew that when they signed veteran Shaq Mason, who isn't getting enough credit, I'm going to keep saying that, we knew he was going to be stud there at the right guard spot. So yeah, aside from the change at center, this is the offensive line we were prepared to roll out for Tom Brady in his 23rd year, minus our center, who we just signed to a couple years deal.
Yes, I don't understand why everybody's like, oh, their entire offensive line's hurt. Yeah, how are they going to protect their whole?
Well, because nobody knows who Luke Gedeke is. And nobody knows who Robert Hainsey is, unfortunately. And that's just how it's going to be.
Everybody looks at Aaron Stinney going down with an ACL. And they're like, oh, my God, he was a starting left guard. Oh, they just lost their starting center and starting left guard. Oh, my God. And then they look at Hainsey leaving practice or getting hurt in a game. Oh, my God, he's their starting center. Now they're their third string center. Relax. Okay, like you said, and Greg Allman pointed out earlier today, I've been thinking it for a while, and thank you, Greg Allman, for doing the Lord's work, because he pointed out, I was like, thank you, that the Bucks starting offensive line has one injury. That is it. If you felt good about the offensive line in June, can you feel as good about it now? No, because Ryan Jensen isn't there, and he's a top 3 center, maybe the best center in football. You can't feel as good about it, sure. Right? Naturally, you just can't. It's going to be a worse unit because Ryan Jensen's that good. But it can't go from, oh, yeah, this offensive line is really good, to, oh, this is going to wreck the season. Yeah, they don't have an offensive line. Stop. It feels
this team's cooked.
It's a cop-out.
This team's cooked. They're only won in 7 games this year. What's up with all these people thinking they won't even make the playoffs? What the hell?
I don't know.
Where did that even come from? I don't know, man.
It's just the thing about when you're analyzing this game and you're saying, oh, well, the Bucks have offensive line issues. That's a cop out. That is a complete cop out. So do better. But there's questions. But to think oh, they have the Bucks offensive line is just in shambles. No, and why are we not talking about Dallas's? Dallas lost their starting tackle to free agency, their starting guard to free agency, and they just lost their starting left tackle to an injury.
They still have Zach Martin.
Why are we not talking about that?
They still have Zach Martin.
Zach
you know
Martin,
what I mean?
Who didn't play last year's game. He did not play in Tampa. I think he tested positive for COVID and he didn't play. But still, that's 3 spots. And I know Dallas had a full offseason to try and replace Lyle Collins and Connor Williams, but left tackle is one of the most important positions in football, and their starting one just went down. So they just had to sign a 40-year-old off the street to try and help. So why are we not discussing Dallas's concerns along the offensive line, but you're hammering Tampa's? It doesn't make much sense to me.
Well, I mean, we've alluded to this in the past, but the Bucs are dominating the news cycle, and it's easy to overthink everything about this team before the season starts. I mean, we are only one Thursday night football game into the season, and I am already seeing those week one overreactions. Like, oh, well, I've seen a couple people say that the Bucs should beat the Rams by 20 or 30 when they play later this year, and unfortunately, it's just not going to happen that way. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen that way.
Reminder to everybody who's going to write the Rams off. Yeah, they looked like crap last night, but reminder that the 1 seed Packers last year lost 38-3 to the Saints in week 1. Just a reminder.
The back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers still had that game, and he still ended up winning MVP.
The Bucs won the Super Bowl and lost 38-3 to the Saints. Like, it happens.
Yeah, Matt Stafford, by the way, I mean, he was notorious for those games. Even in Detroit, he'd go out there and there'd be...
He sold on you fantasy-wise.
Oh,
you're playing
dude.
big. He sold on you.
Dude, so I was feeling great, by the way. I got more teams than I want to keep track of this year. But Gabe Davis put up some points for me early. That was cool. First touchdown of the year was Gabe Davis. I'm a Gabe Davis truther. Cooper Kupp got like close to 30 points, so I was okay with that. I would have liked to see a little more offense from the Rams, but dude, Stafford played like shit.
In our matchup, you had Stafford and Davis, and
Stafford looked terrible. I didn't even check my lineups today because I know I had a couple of other players sprinkled in there, but it'll be interesting to see how this year shakes out. But yes, the Rams.
I think you had Allen Robinson, who is a ghost.
Oh yeah, I know that. I know for a fact I had Allen Robinson. Don't worry about that. I sure as hell thought that was a steal when I drafted him. Damn it!
It was the second quarter, and I'm like, dude, he hasn't even been targeted yet. I'm like, they haven't even thrown his way. Like, what is going on with this guy? So yeah, they're like, he finally gets to play with a good quarterback, and the good quarterback just refuses to throw him the ball. Yeah, so real quick, before we wrap things up, just a few stats here, a few record stats. Todd Bowles, opening first game as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach. A lot of people will sort of forget that. Honestly, this is his first game as the Buccaneers head coach. He's 2-2 in season openers as a head coach. So with the head coach with the Jets, he was 2-2. Brady is now 6-0 versus Dallas still. However, the unfortunate stat, the Bucs in Dallas are 1-12.
Wow.
They have won one game.
Wow.
They have won one game in Dallas. And that was in, this is from my colleague James Yarko over at BucsNation.com. He has a little review up right now. They have one win, and it was in September of 2001. Yeah, so that is their only win in Dallas. They cannot win in Dallas. So hopefully, but they haven't always had Tom Brady. So hopefully that kind of balances things out.
Well, for the people that are superstitious, myself, uniform combo also plays a role here. So the Bucs announced that they haven't dropped the official schedule. Really, the uniform schedule. They haven't dropped that yet. And everybody's going crazy because, if you're not announcing every single uniform combo, people are holding out hope that we'll still see the creamsicle at some point this year.
It's not.
Bucs have been adamant that they are not going to wear it. But let me tell you, dude, I will lose my goddamn mind if, like, week 6, we get a notification on our phones that says, hey, week 10, we're going to be wearing the creamsicle. Go check that out. You know what I mean? Like
week 10 in Germany, baby. Creamsicle.
Oh, God, that'd be insane. I don't think that's the game if they roll it out. But if they decide to play us like that,
it can't happen.
I'm holding out hope. I don't think it happens, but I'm holding out hope. But they are wearing red and white. Red jersey, white pants, and they are undefeated in that color combo.
Yeah, their two games last year was
the Bills and the Giants.
New York and Buffalo, yeah. So both games were at home. This is the first road game. It's going to be a little weird seeing them wear red and white on the road. I actually wanted them because sometimes New Orleans, and we'll get back to the actual game right here soon, but sometimes New Orleans will wear white early in the season at home. And I was thinking, I was like, okay, wear like red and pewter week 1. But I was like, don't wear red and pewter week 2 because you can't win against the Saints in any combination. I was like, the only combination you haven't but gotten beat in is red and white because you haven't worn it. I was like, so wear it then. So like maybe we'll see red and white 2 weeks in a row. How about that?
I don't think we will. If I had to guess, I think it's either going to be red and pewter or it's going to be white and pewter. They're not going to go white on white.
It'll probably be white and pewter.
I think it'll be white and pewter. They seem to like that color combo at home, especially this time of year.
The game's
the game's on the road. What is wrong with me?
But like white and pewter, like they beat New Orleans in New Orleans with that. They won the Super Bowl wearing white and pewter. Whatever. That's But anyways, back to the actual game. Those are your important stats, really. Mike Evans last year versus the Cowboys. He's gonna have to do better this year if they want to win. He had 3 catches and 24 yards. That's gonna have to go up. Especially if Chris Godwin is not available. If Chris Godwin is not available, that is going to have to go up for sure. So he's going to have to get more targets, more looks. So Dallas did a pretty good job of bracketing coverage over to him, and hopefully the Bucs can find a way to get in the football in this one.
Let's go and wrap things up. It is the return of our weekly checklist. So basically what we do is we put together a list of at least 3 things the Bucs are going to have to do if they want to come out of Dallas victorious. And you just talked about the wide receiver position. I wanted to give my 2 cents here. Not only does Mike Evans have to step up this week, but I know he's been floating around on the injury report, but I think to get a lot of people excited about what he can bring to the table, Russell Gage is going to have to get involved at some point, and this is the week for him and Brady to kind of figure it out during a game situation, because I know we had talked about them running the ball, maybe bringing a little bit more of a balanced approach to this offense. I still think Brady's going to throw for over 250, maybe over 300 yards this week.
This is me calling my shot. He catches the first touchdown of the season. I just have a feeling.
I like it. That's bold.
Bold
predictions.
I'm all about the bold takes today, huh? But anyways, the first checklist of the year. Number 1, all of them are pretty obvious, but protect the quarterback. I talked about how, the Bucs offensive line only has 1 injury. That doesn't mean that there still isn't inexperience there with Robert Hainsey and Luke Gedeke. I think people, don't realize how good Ali Marpet just was, and losing him is going to hurt. Like I said, Shaq Mason, Alex Kappa, it's kind of a wash. I think Shaq Mason's actually better than Alex Kappa a little bit. But Ryan Jensen and Robert Hainsey, there's certainly a drop off there. So protect the quarterback. Dallas does have 2 really good edge rushers in Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. And I said, example, the Rams last night. That Rams offense couldn't do nothing, and their offensive line was getting dominated. Stafford was sacked 7 times.
Buffalo didn't even blitz 1 time.
Yeah, it
was blitz once. At all.
It was once. Yeah, it was a 2% blitz. So protect the quarterback. That it doesn't matter how much offensive weaponry you have if you can't get the ball out. So protect the quarterback. Number 2, and we already talked about it, exploit Dallas's injuries. Exploit the injuries on the offensive line. Exploit their lack of a number 2 wide receiver with Michael Gallup, and just exploit everything that you can. The Cowboys are going to try to do the same thing. They're going to be trying to exploit the Bucs offensive line and maybe the loss of Chris Godwin. But you, as an offense, as a defense, you're going to have to try and find those mismatches with the Dallas injuries that they have. 3, win the turnover battle, which you didn't do last year, yet you still won the game. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that this year and still win the game. So I think win the turnover battle, and you're going to be, if you do all these 3 of these things, you're going to be well on your way to win the game. And this isn't really a 4th one, just kind of like a bonus. I am terrified of Kevontae Turpin, like terrified, because the Bucs special teams have not been special, and he really shined. And I know it's preseason, but like he's got a talent for it. If you do it twice in one game, you got a talent for it.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
A kickoff and a punt return, you clearly have a talent for it. So I hope the game plan on kickoffs is to be able to kick it out of the end zone every time. Bradley Pinion was really good at that. He's not there anymore, so I would assume Jake Camardo would be the guy on kickoffs, because Ryan Sucker really doesn't have that type of leg. And then obviously Jake Camardo on punts. So you gotta find a way to either punt away from that guy, or if you do punt to him or kick to him, make sure your coverage is good, because that could be a game wrecker. And Todd Bowles even talked about that earlier this week, that could be a game wrecker. So keep an eye on him, and I am very, very concerned about him.
I know you're not the only one. This Bucs special teams unit has obviously been under scrutiny these past couple of years, even before Brady got here. You know, Bruce Arians in 2019, people were talking about how bad the special teams unit was, or people wanted us to talk about how bad the special teams unit was. And it hasn't been a trend that has gotten any better. But luckily, you have a team on both sides of the ball that can definitely make up for that. I don't have anything to add to the weekly checklist, but I did want to re-emphasize protecting Tom Brady. Not only the turnover battle, but giving Tom enough time to get the ball out of his hands. He's one of the best in the league at doing it quickly, but Luke Gedeke in particular at that left guard spot, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a rough first few weeks for Luke Gedeke.
That's a gauntlet.
I mean, it is trial by fire in the purest form, and it helps that he's got a couple of all-pros playing next to him. Donovan Smith, not quite all-pro, but solid, has definitely redeemed himself these last 3 seasons. Tristan Wirfs, one of the best right tackles in the league, holding it down. You've got former Pro Bowler Shaq Mason at right guard. And then, of course, Robert Hainsey, the inexperience at center, comes in to be a factor there. But I still think Gedeke is going to get more of that heat because he's not snapping the football. Mm-hmm. And there are some pretty tough interior linemen he's going to be squaring off against to start the season. But really quickly, while we are on the weekly checklist, our buddy J.C. Allen from Pewter Report, let's give him a shout out here in the live chat, drops his keys to the game as well. He says, protect Brady, utilize the quick passing game, don't get stupid penalties and turn the ball over, attack Dak Prescott early and often, per usual, stop the run. And I like this one, tackle. Tackle. Man, tackle was shitty. Tackling was awful this preseason. I mean, it was bad.
To be fair, the good thing, the starting defense was barely out there. So.
Yeah, and when they were out there against Indy, those 2 series they had, they looked good. But yeah, tackle. I feel like it takes some guys till week 6, 7, and 8 to really like figure out how to tackle efficiently.
Yeah. It could. And in the past for Bucs teams, it has been an issue. So for sure.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Before we get out of here, I know we did the season prediction show last week, and I think both of our picks are definitely still the same. But if you had to drop a score prediction, Evan, how do you think this one shakes out on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, I think it's a close game. I think it's a lower scoring game. I have the Bucs winning 24-21. I just think, like we talked about earlier, the Bucs are the better team on paper. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they have the more healthier team, believe it or not, than Dallas. And I think that at the end of the day is going to prevail. So another close game versus Dallas, but I think it's a win.
I like 3 touchdowns and a pair of field goals to put Tampa Bay on top of this one. 27-21 is my final score. But, yeah, got the Bucs coming out on top.
JC chimes in and says 27-20. I assume he means the Bucs. I think he means the Bucs. So,
shocker! Shocker! He's taking Dallas. No, he's not. I'm pretty sure he's picking the Bucs as well. Shout out once again to our guys over at Pewter Report. Everybody getting geared up for a great year of content. Should be a good one, man. I feel like a kid on Christmas. You know what I mean? Like, we are just a couple of short days away from the start of the Buccaneers 2022 season. And it's always exciting. It's always an exciting time of year, but it doesn't hit you differently until you see them roll out of the tunnel, right? Until you see them on the field warming up, everybody's ready to go. Like, that's when you know it's for real. We are just a couple of short days away from that. Another score prediction here in the chat. Our buddy Mark says, I think the Bucs take down the boys 38-17. Edwin Hernandez says 31-24 Bucs. I haven't seen many other score predictions, but drop them as we start to wrap things up. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for checking out this week's game preview edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. We are really looking forward to Sunday night's game against the Dallas Cowboys on prime time. I cannot build this thing up enough. Should be a lot of fireworks, and I'm excited to watch it. Richard T says it's okay if the Buccaneers lose because that's just evidence Brady wins the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, hey, if our predictions are wrong, I know it is a tough stretch to start the season. So the Bucs will probably be starting from behind if they fall 0-1. But Tom Brady has won a Super Bowl every single season he has started 0-1.
Every single year he's lost the first game.
We are also in the year that Tom Brady typically wins the Super Bowl. I mean, it has been
here's the thing.
He has won a Super Bowl every other year for the past, I don't know, 8 years at this point?
Well, I'm just saying the Bucs won in 2002. They won in 2020, and now we're in 2022. So the Bucs only win when the two numbers are 2 and 0. So Just saying.
Thanks for checking out the most superstitious Bucks podcast there is this week. We're giving you all sorts of that stuff.
We will be live after the game for the post-game review show. So we will be doing the entire show after the game. It'll be late. Come hang out with us so we don't fall asleep. Hopefully celebrating a win, but either way, win, lose, or draw, we'll be on no matter what. So
check out the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show and, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got this week for previewing the Dallas game?
As far as previewing it, don't have a whole lot. Guys at Bucs Nation have that covered. We got a lot of great things coming out, but as far as after the game, might have something special. So be on the lookout for that probably on Monday at some point.
Our buddy Joel in chat says 31-21 Bucs. More people picking Tampa Bay. Bigger margin in that one. He thinks the Bucs get over 30 points. That'll be interesting to see as well. I'm not sure what the over-under is on the game this week.
I believe it's 51.5. I think.
I like the under. I like the under.
I mean, Bucs. I still think Bucs are -2.5. I think.
Okay. All right. So. Perfect time to remind you guys once again that this week's podcast is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. Go check them out. You can use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, when you sign up. Get 50% bonus on your first deposit. So if you bet $100, you'll get an extra $50 on top of it, courtesy of us and our friends at the Believe Podcast Network. Last but not least, you can find myself on social media, Instagram and Twitter, at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Week 1 of the NFL season is here. We will talk to you guys Sunday night after the game right here, youtube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast. And of course, it'll be available on all of our podcast outlets shortly thereafter. But thanks once again for hanging out with us this week. Excited for Bucs football to be back and excited to keep you guys posted every step of the way. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you Sunday night after the game. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.